There's all the humans.
Yes, it's very good to see everybody. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tobias Reed. I'm your state treasurer, and I'm really excited that you're all here with us tonight. You know, in normal times, one of the best things about being state treasurer is getting to travel around the state and interact with people, to see you in person, to hear about your accomplishments, your challenges, all the things that are happening in the world. And frankly, I miss that. I'm here in my home office, missing the chance to see all of you. So we're going to try something a little different tonight. Our best attempt at a virtual town hall. And if you're like me, you've been on plenty of Zoom calls and virtual meetings. And I think about the worst thing is to hear one person drone on and on and on. So we're not going to do that tonight. We brought in a ringer, a dynamic voice who's going to keep things moving, keep me honest, and keep the conversation flowing. Jessi Duley of BurnCycle. And I'm going to turn it over to her in just a second. But part of what has prompted this conversation is an op-ed that I wrote in the Oregonian a couple of weeks ago, which stems from my concern as the state's chief investment officer. From my perspective, the two things above all else that's going to have a big effect on how we're going to recover economically from the challenging circumstances we have now are getting schools open safely and supporting small businesses in Oregon. So anything is open tonight, but those are the things that I particularly want to talk about and hear from you on. We've got a number of questions already, which is great. Jessi's going to keep them coming and keep us moving, but please feel free to keep sending your questions and your ideas and let us know if this format works for you. If we're at all successful, my hope is that we can keep this going as long as we're not able to be together in person. So with that, Jessi, thanks for being here and kicking us off and getting us going tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you. My name is Jessi Dooley. I'm a small business owner here in Oregon. And prior to the pandemic, we had locations in Portland and Washington. We employed over 100 people. I'm very proud of the business that we've built up over the last 8 years because we are very much operate under the idea of building up the people that build a business that then builds a thriving community. So a business that I think Oregon could be really proud of, and also a business that Oregon is at stake of losing. And so I had met Tobias a couple times via Zoom since it's just been the last year. And I had sent him an email, I don't know how many, whenever it was. And he just called me. And we had just a phenomenal conversation that gave me a sliver of hope as a small business owner. And that's all I need. I think right now we are being tested. There is only so much resilience in the human spirit. I am feeling that. And then talking to Tobias, somebody, in the public sector that actually I had a conversation with. It wasn't, this sort of, surface level. I'm not really going to give any answers or commit to one way or the other, or I'm trying to stay away from this or not do this. It was just a conversation, and I love people that make it make sense. And so I'm very excited to be here with Tobias because, the situation I'm in, and I know a lot of small business owners feel the same way I do, is we're just looking for some answers or a plan. We're coming up on the 1 year mark, and that's pretty wild to think about. So I think we can start off. We've got questions to start off with, and I've got one that we in particular wanted to start out with. And if you guys haven't already given us your questions, you guys can put them into the chat, and we will answer them as we go. But so let's kick it off, Tobias. Small businesses. So I recently read in the Portland Business Journal that small businesses, 99% of businesses in Oregon actually qualify as small businesses per the SBA, so 500 employees or less. So 99% of the businesses in Oregon are small businesses. Of that, they employ roughly, I think it was 40% of Oregon employees, and they are getting hit the absolute hardest. Now, they employ hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Oregon. They've been disproportionately impacted by the crisis. We struggled to get PPP loans. I know I struggled, and then we were only allowed to ask for 8 weeks. So people are like, oh, you have a small business, but you got PPP, and you're like, for 8 weeks. It's been a year. So we've had to adapt, we've had to change, we've had to pivot, we've had to do all the different things, but given the continued uncertainty that we'll likely see a lot more small businesses close. We kind of saw that first wave of closures, huge stakeholders in Portland, like Tasty and Alder, and now we're seeing things like the Nines and continued closures. I read another study that said 39% of small leisure businesses and hospitality businesses in Oregon have already closed. And those are the kind of things that make Oregon, Oregon. So anyways, how do you, I guess, Tobias, how do you see the Oregon economy long-term, this whole sort of thing affecting everything, I just said? How do you see that affecting the Oregon economy long-term? And how can we better, how can we better support small businesses?
Well, I hope everybody can see now why I asked Jessie to help facilitate this conversation, because she's asked everything in the first question already. This is at the heart of it. I mean, so many of these iconic businesses are not there, and all of us, we could probably spend the rest of the time in chat or in person going around the room, the virtual room here, talking about the businesses that we know and love and aren't going to see anymore. And the really scary part is that I don't think we fully appreciate that yet, because to the extent we've been doing our jobs, wearing our masks, staying distant, there's probably a lot of stuff out there that we don't know is already gone. So it's going to be a big thing. And credit to you and all the other small businesses that are already adapting and figuring out how to make it work. I think we've got to be flexible. When we come back, we've got to recognize that things are not going to look exactly the same. The legislature is starting right now, already underway in the session. I think everything should be on the table to make sure that we're filling those gaps, that we're being flexible with the regulations, that we're being flexible with licensing and revenue, being supportive of those who are starting a business, who are helping to solve the problems that are already out there and emerging. And it is totally right, as you said, that so much of Oregon's economy is based on small businesses. These are the people that we get to know, that we form relationships with, that we have ongoing commitments to in our communities. So it has to be part of our coherent plan. And if I know anything about small businesses, and mostly what I know is through you and other entrepreneurs, is that you're flexible and you're creative. And if you know what the rules are and what the plan is, you can figure it out. So having a coherent plan, being ready to go I hope I'm just giving the right sort of frustration voice here, because I can feel it from all of you, the businesses that don't know what's coming next. How do you adapt? How do you succeed when the game and the rules are changing? So consistency, a plan, and flexibility, I think, are the keys for us going forward.
I'm gonna follow up on that too. So something, little Civics 101, everybody, because this is exciting, right? So there's a short legislative period, and then there is a long session. And so prior to the pandemic, the Oregon legislative, all of the legislators were in the short session. So
Right.
keep this in mind right now. I want to say this is that right now, Oregon is in the long session. So January to June, now is when things are going to get passed. Budgets are going to get passed. So part of what I know I would like to do, because I've also got 3 kids, it feels like 300. Plus I'm trying to save my business, and I can only advocate so much, is that we really appreciate people on the ground and people like you guys that can use your voices to reach out to your representatives. So stuff that we talk about tonight, that you say, hey, this is important to me, or I know I can do my part, I can use my voice. And again, for me too, apathy is just my worst nightmare. And
Yeah.
so knowing that there are steps I can take to help, bring back the vibrancy to our state. So keep that in mind, you guys, because I want to follow up to that question really quick, Tobias, is that with 100, why don't we just round up? If it's 99%, should we just, no, we'll keep the facts, right? But 99% of the businesses in Oregon being small businesses, when they come out and they close us down again and they say, okay, here's 55 million, you break that up into 99% of the Oregon businesses, it didn't even cover my printer ink. And so it was really, really challenging when everyone was like, but didn't you do this? And so there's this sort of this public, I think there's a lack of transparency from the top around what kind of support is actually, where the state is actually giving. I mean, we were trying to do all of the applications. We had multiple people doing it, and 326, it was opened at 326, it was all done. They closed it down. I didn't even get to my address. And
Yeah.
so can you talk a little bit about if there's ways that we can push around budgeting or financing, or how we're going to see small business support fiscally, because that's such a huge part of it?
I was a legislator for 10 years, and there are some current and former legislators with us tonight, I think. And one of the real challenges is figuring out how to make the best choices with limited assets. And all of these things are connected. But what we've got to make sure is that we're doing the things that are going to have the biggest impact. A lot of times when we face these challenges, it's a question of speed on one hand and precision on the other. If we're feeling the urgency and we want to get things out there, sometimes we're in a rush to do it and we run into those unintended consequences like the ones you described. Other times, if we're wanting to get it just exactly right, it takes a long time and there's cost to both of those. So it's a constant push-pull between those things. But the first point you made just a minute ago is exactly right, because legislators need to hear from small business owners. And I know it's pretty hard, especially in a pandemic, when you're trying to run your business or save it or keep it going, to say, I'm going to carve out some time to interact with my legislators. But as a former legislator, I know that I really valued the perspective, the direct experience of business owners that I represented, whether they were in the district I represented or not, because all of us in Oregon are connected through the economy. We have an income tax. We don't have a sales tax. We have a pretty strange system of property tax. So a success in one place or a challenge in one place is connected to the entire state. So when you can, let your legislators know what's happening and what you really need. That has to be at the heart of what we're doing. And it's pretty hard, I think, also to be a small business owner. And you just articulated this too, Jessie, that, I mean, if you're lucky enough to be able to work at home, and a lot of people are not, how do you balance that with remote learning? It may be a victory so far that we haven't had our 6th grade daughter and our 2nd grade son come down and interrupt this conversation. But everybody's dealing with this. And legislators need to understand that getting schools open and supporting small businesses are the route to a successful recovery in the economy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to read some of the questions that we've got in. So this is, I think, a really good one from Allison. Now that vaccines are underway, can we speed up the economic recovery or reopening?
I hope so. We should. I mean, these are the things that are all going to be connected. As more people have vaccines, we're still going to, of course, need to wear masks and wash our hands and stay distant, but more and more things are possible. And as we are focused on that, we should have a coherent plan, both for business and for schools, to be open, to get back safely so that people can resume their lives, people can recover in their businesses, and everything is connected to these two things.
So just to follow up on that, is when how do we, I guess, galvanize as the people on here, and then we tell our respective circles, and how do we get the plan? Who's got the plan? Who's in charge? No. Who's the principal of the school? Who's the the babysitter right now? Like, how does, and I don't want to say, oh, it's Kate Brown or whatever, like that. That's not accessible. Believe me, I've tried to get a hold of her for a year. But when you say the plan, how is there any way that we, the lay people on this call can help, like I said, galvanize to actually get the plan or see the plan? And is it just reaching out to our legislators and saying, we want the plan, give us the plan, we want that?
That's a great start. Absolutely. Everything that I'm reading and talking to school leaders around the state suggests that it is possible if we have a clear, consistent, and steady instruction. We can make it. We can get schools back open. Give the districts the ability to do that, but don't keep changing the data. Don't keep adjusting. Say this is what we need, and let local districts figure it out. When that happens, we've got to do it safely. We've got to recognize that educators are at the center of that, and make sure that they are vaccinated. We've got to employ the right kinds of investments in PPE and distancing and everything else. But that's at the heart of it. And let's have a plan. It might take a little while, but I think people will be understanding, will be patient if we're consistent about that and indicating that is our priority. I just want to get off the position that we seem to be in now, which is sort of bouncing from different development to different development. We can say that we need to adjust when things change, but if we're consistent about our intent to open schools and help small businesses weather this pandemic and be ready to succeed, that's what's going to set us up for success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. We're going to just start the trending hashtag, where's the plan? Right? Yeah. That's what we're all going to do for the state of Oregon, for everyone we know. So I have another question here that I think is interesting. I understand getting kids back to school quickly. My thought, and this is from Evelyn, my thought is by the time all safety systems are in place, we will be heading towards school being out shortly after. Shouldn't we be talking about and making a plan to continue school through the summer? Or is this so cost prohibitive that there is not even a chance? It just seems that getting kids back to school in March or April will be a practice run for how it will work for the new school year, especially a hybrid.
Evelyn's got a good point. I think, but every moment we can get it figured out sooner is to our advantage. I said in the op-ed that it might be time to think about suspending the summer vacation at least for this year, maybe longer. I mean, let's admit what most of us already know. Most of us are not farmers, and we hold on in a lot of ways to an academic schedule that was based on a time when many of us were farmers. That doesn't have to be the case, and maybe in the end we can look back at this COVID period as a nudge we got to do that and other good things. I think she's right. I don't know that there's anything magic necessarily about the fall. Hopefully, we're going to have more vaccines, lower cases, more understanding, and more capacity to deal with things. But we're never going to get to the point that there is zero risk. There's not zero risk about much of anything. For me, this is about risk mitigation and making sure that we have an understanding of how we can limit the risk as much as possible. And frankly, to use a kind of clunky sports analogy, this is an opportunity to get in more reps, to get more comfortable, to get more expert at what does work and what doesn't work and what we need to be prepared for. I don't know any parent, and I'd be surprised if anyone here did, who is excited about the prospect of another school year with all the challenges that all of us have experienced this school year.
Yeah, I know that's a hard pass on that. I think that it's just so challenging as a parent to look at the loss of learning and how to catch them up, and then to think, what's it going to look like 20 years from now, or is this a global setback? As a country, I am so proud to be from such an entrepreneurial community of Portland, Oregon, but will this shatter that spirit? Will they be so behind in innovation and learning because we're not gonna, is this hybrid model even gonna work, or what? It's
Physical
really
interaction.
challenging
I mean,
to
our kids, we're so hungry for physical interaction. The opportunity in our kids' case, it's art and sports, and where are the safe places to interact with their peers and be outside and move their bodies and get the mental health benefits of that. The academics are clearly important, but there's all those other things that kids connect with too, and so we're missing out on all of that.
Yeah, it's kids definitely need to be taught and not told, which I learned the hard way. So I have another question I think is very important. This is from Jeff. What help can we provide single or working parents with children and students at home?
Well, this is one of those questions I wish I had better answers to, but I think all of us can look for those opportunities to interact. I just noticed my mom is on this call. I didn't know she was joining us tonight, but she's been a great help when we're able to connect our kids with her on Zoom. It's not as good as being in person, of course, but she has an amazing ability when there are the inevitable sort of flare-ups and frustrations that our daughter can take the iPad or the Zoom and walk off into her room and have a conversation. But these are short-term kinds of solutions, and what we really need is to get schools back open. That is the thing. It impacts single people in particular who don't have the support that many other people do, having to make that choice about how to try to keep their job or manage remote learning, how to keep those together. Again, I think it is having a consistent plan about getting schools open in a safe way that's going to make the biggest impact for single people.
And just to follow up on that, I know on a massive national scale, I think we've seen, again, I can't remember right now, so I don't want to cite up anything that I don't have a fact to back it up with or a number to back it up with. But I know you said in your op-ed, in Oregon alone, we saw 37,000 women leave the workforce this fall because they were, forced to, I don't want to say we, but the reality is they were, somebody had to choose to stay home for the homeschooling. And I mean, I would venture to believe, well, in my household, I am, my husband is the primary parent. He's just better at it. My upper lip sweats like as soon as they look at me. I'm like, I don't know what they want, and but I am their mother, so I give them what they need. But I'm sure the reality of why so many women, had to make that really hard choice is also the likelihood that they're probably not paid as much, and that's a whole nother thing we
Right.
can talk about later. But let's talk about that. That 37,000, female Oregonians, women Oregonians, however you want to identify, at least somebody from the household had to leave a job because of homeschooling. So,
Yeah.
what are we going to do to get those people back to work? And how are we going to get? I know we're going to open schools, but
That's it. That's the most important thing. I mean, the fact is that there was one month, and I can't remember which one it was, when the federal jobs report came out, and literally 100% of the job loss is attributable
yeah,
to women who are leaving the workforce. And as you said, it's a totally rational um, decision for them in Oregon and across the country. Modern life requires, in a lot of cases, two incomes to make things work. But so does it requires direct attention, this strange remote learning configuration that we're dealing with now. So we've got to get schools open. We got to give people that chance. And we're foolish if we're not focused on that, because of all the talent, all the ideas, all the energy that women represent. Why would we be saying no to that? It's a terrible thing, but it's the truth that women bear more of the responsibility of the economy. It's an unacceptable calculation for women to have to make. And if you need any kind of really vivid description of this, there was a really excellent article in the New York Times.
I just read that. It was so good. It was so good. If you haven't read it, everybody read it.
Absolutely. It was day to day, hour to hour, several women around the country and the experiences that they're having, just awful. And nobody should have to do this.
No, painstaking. I think that I want to just make a caveat that for me, I am a small business owner, but I also have a situation of my mother is currently fighting cancer, and she has fought her. Forgive me for saying this, but she needs her ass off for 3 years. I mean, just fought, and now we're in this position of COVID, where just one slip up could mean the worst after fighting and fighting and fighting. And so I've had to approach this pandemic with a duality of, oh my gosh, I'm losing my business, but also I want to keep everyone safe. Nobody breathe towards North Portland. If everyone could just stop breathing towards North Portland, I'd be very grateful. But the setbacks that are going to last so much longer than this virus ever will, the setbacks to women working, the setbacks to children and our innovation and their ability to keep up. I read from the World Economic Forum, they said they anticipate over 7 million kids dropping out in the next 2 years because of loss of learning, and then the confidence that they won't feel like they'll be able to catch up. 7 million kids dropping out. And you think about that as a workforce, or how is that going to affect, when we all want to close the opportunity gap. And so what does that do for that in the long term? And so, I think I could keep talking on that, but I want to get to more people's questions I have here. This is from Chris. Tobias: as a minority small business owner and a university professor, minority businesses fall into a subcategory. We have been affected disproportionately. Have you done anything to help this group's folks need access to capital and training?
Yeah. Yeah, there are two things I think that are worth talking about here. One is the CARES Fund that the legislature passed in one of those special sessions, $62 million with the special intent of assisting minority-owned businesses. The other, that's a little bit longer term, is the Oregon Growth Board, who has the specific focus of trying to make sure that capital is available to underserved communities, both geographically and demographically. But this is one of those exact situations where we have a short-term problem that has really been revealed by COVID. So many things that were already kind of there, but easier to ignore, to look past, to gloss over, that COVID is making even more vivid. So we've got to make sure that those resources are targeted and that they're there amongst all the other things that the legislature has to balance. I think it comes back again to, what are the key things? There are lots of issues worth describing and grappling with in the legislature, but for me, everything comes down to getting schools open and making sure that we're doing everything we can to keep businesses operating and surviving through the pandemic. everything gets easier the better we do at that. Everything gets harder the worse we do at that.
Mhm. Mhm. I think I'm gonna jump to another question here. They're coming in. They're coming in
Good.
rapid. You guys have a lot of questions, and I think
Great.
this is going to feed into that because my concern here, and like I said, really haven't slept since March 13th, 2020. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe 2022 I'll sleep. I don't know. We'll see. Jury's still out. Is how the Oregon economy as a whole is going to recover from this. Let's just get this out of the way. For me, I am extremely panicked that we do not have sales tax. The state does not have sales tax. We all know this, but that means that the things that we want to do to change and to grow our state, to create more opportunities for minority business owners, to have more funding for that, to have the structure for to better assess the houselessness problem. We want things like this, not just the Oregon recovery after COVID, but all the things that we as the hopeful Oregonians want. We need money. We need basic commerce to do that. And when the economy is shut down the way it is, we can't get there. And the reality is, I, as the business owner, pay the tax that I do, the employer tax, and then it's you, the people that are employed, with the income tax. That is where the money comes from. There's our investments and there's other stuff like that. But I've grilled Tobias on why we don't have sales tax and just add that in. So you should just give your little spiel really quick on that. And then I have a question around how we are investing as a state and what our balance sheet looks like.
Well, I like the way you asked the question, Jessie, because it really is a fundamental question for all of us to grapple with. In that we need to ask what do we want to buy as a state? What do we want to invest in? That's why we raise taxes, to buy things. And if we imagine, for example, that we just became a state yesterday and that we have to have a tax structure in order to buy the things we want. I've been running this unscientific experiment for many years now. I can only see one screen here, but does anyone want to raise their hand in defense of the tax structure that we currently have? I don't see anyone raising their hand. So we're all agreed that we don't like what we currently have. What if I told you we could have a different structure that would not ask Oregonians who are currently paying taxes to pay any more, but it would generate more money for education and healthcare and transportation, all the things we want? The answer, of course, is a sales tax. And the reason that works is because it captures the cash economy and tourism. And you could adjust for income tax and property tax that people are already paying to get to that neutral position for everybody who's currently paying taxes. What people will automatically say to me instantly is, well, we voted on that 9 times. And my somewhat tongue-in-cheek response is to say, that's true, but it's important to remember that the last time we had that discussion in a real way was before the internet. And sometimes we have to ask the question repeatedly to get the right answer. It took us 5 statewide votes to give women the right to vote in Oregon. So I think it's a discussion worth having going forward.
Okay, thank you. That was the only answer I could come up with, or the only solution I could come up with at 2:30 in the morning on March 14th. I was like, we're all screwed, everything's screwed, the ship's going down, we need sales tax. No. Okay, so then I have a couple other questions around that. Is what is the state investing in? The market looks good right now, but is it too vulnerable, or volatile, vulnerable, but one and the same? And then also, is, as the chief investment officer, I think you could probably answer both of these questions, is how can Oregon use its balance sheet to help rejuvenate the economy? So I think you could probably, it's a good question for you.
We are investing, and the short answer is basically that we invest in just about everything, because the relatively large portfolio that we invest is largely not our money. It's the biggest portion of it is the retirement fund, which of course belongs to current and future retirees, and we have to act in their interest. We're also investing on behalf of local governments similarly. But the advantage of this is that we can think about the really long term, and we can use our influence, particularly when we collaborate with other institutional investors, to try to do the things that, and there are lots of them, where our values align with our fiduciary responsibility. So think about the fact that companies who are prepared to deal with climate disruption are going to be profitable and more profitable long into the future. Companies that have diverse leadership teams and workforces are going to be more profitable in the long run. So all of these are examples of doing the right thing, but they're also examples of where we make more money for our beneficiaries by doing that. And we've got lots to learn and lots more to do, but we're among the national leaders in making sure that we're integrating those factors into our decisions in all of the asset classes where we invest.
All right. So then, you know, we're talking about the Oregon balance sheet and, you know, where we are right now as a state. And obviously you're the one that's looking at the finances and, you know, I'm sure that when I look at the finances, we're totally relatable, right? Your situation and my situation. But based on where we are now, just, I mean, like right now, what kind of, I guess, fiscal changes? I don't want to say taxes and I don't want to say, but like, can you even throw out ballpark numbers? Like Kate Brown threw out 55 million. Again, that seems like this massive number, but because 99% of the small businesses in Oregon can apply for that money, that's not a lot of money. And so, you know, can you talk a little bit about or give us some specifics or anything? And I know that's a really challenging question, but around what it's going to take to, you know, what sort of where we are as an Oregon economy, like you know, I think in my mind, everything is on fire. That is a terrible thing to say because our state was literally on fire like 6 months ago. But
We can talk about fires too. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, we can go there in my heart. You know, it just is. It's so challenging to think that we're going to be able to get out of this. But then you look at the numbers, and is we are we doing okay because we have these investments, and can we make the decisions to change the budgets here and there and adjust things so that we can invest more into the schools to make them safe and invest more into the small business that we need to, or are we talking hundreds of millions of dollars that we somehow need to come up with or get from federal funding? Can you just talk
yes,
a little
all
bit
of
about,
that.
give us a little
Yeah,
sliver of hope there,
yeah.
Tobias?
Yes to all of that. And let me start with a little bit of good news and a little bit of credit. Amidst all of this challenging stuff, Oregon is actually pretty well off compared to where we might be. The governor and the legislature took some early action. The number of deaths and cases in Oregon is relatively low on a per capita basis. For years, the legislature, and I was privileged to be part of it at one point, has been socking away money in reserves for just this sort of situation. We have bonding capacity. And I'll go through each of these in a little bit. Having reserve funds means that we can have the resources to deploy things for important purposes, as the emergency board has done, as the legislature now considers in the course of a budget. It's not enough to take us through unharmed entirely, and it's not inexhaustible, but we're in a much better position to be able to draw down those reserves for these important investments. Similarly, bonds are a really powerful thing. We've got to be very careful with them, of course, and protect our credit rating and use that capacity judiciously. But at a time when interest rates are so very low and when the need is so high, this is a good time to build stuff. And I certainly prefer the kinds of physical assets that have really long lives and that benefit a whole lot of people. But this is what this tool is for. Think about all the deferred maintenance that needs to be done. It might not be as much fun to cut a ribbon on a repaired roof or an upgraded HVAC system at a school, but these are what that tool is for, and they can have really tremendous impacts on the economy, the capacity right now, and the resilience going forward. And so there are tools. There are talented people, dedicated people who can do this work, but we've got to be serious about it. And the impatience that I think we all feel is real. Every day that parents have to choose between doing the job they want to do, managing remote learning, every time a small business like yours is having to make tough decisions, is a day that we're not making progress towards an economy that is back to its full potential and as resilient as we'd like it to be.
Okay, so and maybe this will I have just a follow-up question to that one too, Tobias, is so what can we be doing then as the civilians on the ground, that we hear this and this is great. I feel a sense of relief, and then I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go see 100 for lease signs on businesses that I loved. And so how does that, you know, I don't want to use the term trickle down because I know that's not the, but how do we get what is happening at the top? How do we see that as the people walking down the sidewalks and seeing our favorite coffee shop gone and seeing our favorite, restaurant gone or whatever. So things that make Oregon. How are we going to actually see that I guess play out in our daily lives. I mean, I think we all live here for quality of life, right? It's so, and so much of that is that we have this amazing passionate, purpose driven, community of small business owners, and we're not getting it. We got the 155 million from Kate Brown, and that was it, and it didn't do anything. And now, as they're going in to decide on legislation and budgets, how can we make sure that our voices are loud enough? Because to me, it's all that we're talking about. But is it not being amplified on the floor, or what are we missing, or is there a disconnect between what's happening with the actual legislation and the decision makers and the people that have the ability to take the money and get it into the hands of people? More minority owned businesses invest in that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And I want
Yeah.
to thank you guys all for joining in my conversation of grilling Tobias.
No, it's it. That you're giving voice, Jessie, to what I think we all feel. And I think you're frankly being diplomatic about it, because it's really maddening to see those things, to see those businesses that we've known and loved not there, to hear our friends and family and neighbors struggling with how to manage school in this situation. And I don't want to skip over that, because it is hard. It is frustrating. Go read that story about those women in the New York Times. All of us probably have versions of that in our own lives or in people we know. There's nothing easy about this, and I don't want to skip over that and it'll just be fine. At the same time, it really is the challenge for legislators, I think, to balance amongst all of these things, because there's no shortage of needs, and many of them are meritorious. Many of them are good issues to take on, but we've got to have the discipline to say these are the things that are going to make a difference in how the economy gets restarted. And I just feel really strongly that a growing economy, when it's well distributed and equitable, is what makes our other aspirations possible. When people have opportunities, when they have income, when they have autonomy and resilience and choices, that's when we can do all of these other things. And so it's not, as much as I just said, I don't want to skip over this, it is also worth thinking about what's it going to be like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road. Hopefully, we're going to know more about the disease. Hopefully, we're going to have more vaccines distributed. We're still going to be wearing masks and being careful, I think. But we also have to get used to the idea that this has to be about risk mitigation, not risk elimination. Those have to be part of the conversation. We have to be imagining what things are going to be like, giving people the flexibility. As gym owners, particularly you and your colleagues, are amongst the safest people I know. I don't know any business, by the way, who wants to make their customer base sick. We've got to give more flexibility to businesses to understand how to operate safely and take our cues from the ingenuity and the creativity you've brought to that, to learn from the data, to learn from the experiences that you're having, and make sure that people have the ability to participate in a coherent plan. For now, I sound like a broken record, I'm sure, but making sure that your legislators are hearing from you, the experiences you're having, the observations you are making, and making sure that that is at the core of the agenda for the legislature is really, really important.
All right, I'm going to jump into, I've got 2 questions and I'm going to combine into one. Thank you.
Great.
And so one of the questions is this, what is your response to parents who are completely losing their faith in the public schooling system, and that are desperately trying to create pods and find charter schools, private church basements, like somebody's car, to anything, because they've lost their faith in the public schooling system? And to tag onto that, an additional question was, despite placing educators ahead of seniors for vaccinations, the teachers and the union leaders are not agreeing to go back to the classroom. What will it take from the state leadership to get them back into the classroom? So I think that's kind of a twofold question.
Two important
They feel like
questions.
they're together.
Yeah, I wouldn't question any parent's devotion to their own kid. You've got to do what's right for your own kid. But I think this notion of public education is so very important for us, especially in a society in a modern age where it's so possible for people to just to be in their own worlds, to surround themselves with people who think, look, and act like them. The value of public institutions is really important. And I can understand the frustration, but I think this is something that matters to our long-term future. So do what you can, please, to stay involved, and be part of that system. It's going to come back. And in the short run, let's make it really clear. We have 197 school districts in Oregon. So the concept of local control is, I understand it, but at the same time, we need leadership from the governor, who is, after all, the superintendent of public instruction, and the legislature, to say, this is the plan, this is the priority, this is what we need. It doesn't work right now to have things changing, to have all of the inconsistencies that are out there. We've got to be safe, of course, but the key to an economic recovery is making sure that schools are open and small businesses are surviving.
So just to kind of grill you a little bit, so do you think, I mean, I think we're all struggling as parents to say, we are hearing that the teachers union doesn't want to come back. We want them to feel safe. Absolutely. As a parent who tried homeschooling, I never, ever, ever want to ever be a teacher, and bless their hearts, truly. But what happens if we've funded PPE, we're doing everything that we possibly can. We're getting people vaccinated, and there's just like, what do we do? And where does it have to come from the top? Does it have to come from the governor? Does it have to be this, I guess, one side or the other, black and white kind of thing?
Don't think it's one side, black and white, and I appreciate you asking the question that way. I absolutely recognize the desire and the need for educators and support staff to be safe. And that's one of the good things about having many of them having vaccines and more of them getting there. When I talk to education leaders around the state, they are clear that virtually all of the concerns can be addressed. Of course, this doesn't mean that there's zero risk. There is going to be risk. And what we know about the virus is that it's going to be here. We're going to have to learn to live with it. We're going to have to learn to adapt to it. But our future as a state, our future as an education and an economy depends on our ability to do that. So we've got to get serious about that. And education is a great place for that to play out, to make sure that we've got this figured out. It does require leadership. It does require a consistent plan. And I have confidence that the governor and the legislature can do that, particularly when we can demonstrate to them the support and the consistent support on our part to make that the first priority.
All right. So here's a question from Peter. Tobias, what will it take to craft a coalition of reasonable people on both sides of the aisle and the legislator that can unite to solve the state's problems?
Wow, that's the $1 billion question, isn't it? I think it requires a number of things. One is a consistent willingness to engage in the process, because there's a lot of it that is not very much fun. It's details, it's challenging stuff. But the other thing that I think is really important, and this just applies to every one of us, is a willingness to tolerate incrementalism, to get used to the idea that progress doesn't require you to have everything you want. We've had a really interesting experience over the last 4 years being involved in a challenging circumstance in the Elliott State Forest. And I was just so struck by some testimony that people who were involved in this offered before the land board a few months ago. And they said, look, this plan that's in front of you is not what any one of us would have crafted if we got to do it ourselves, but it's something we can live with, and it's something we think will work. And that, for me, was the model that I think we should apply to all of these other things. We got to spend time getting clear on what the priorities are. It doesn't mean we have to agree 100%, and it doesn't mean that we have to agree on the exact way to get there. But we do have to agree that schools and small businesses are the key to our recovery, and continue to engage, to be relentless about it, to say, I didn't get it done today, but I'm coming back tomorrow to keep working on this, because it matters. It matters for our future. It matters for the future of the state. It matters for all the kids that we care about and what their future is going to be like.
All right. I know I've heard from an enormous amount of people that they feel so deeply convicted to opportunities to grow in the state of Oregon in regards to sort of social justice and things like this, and then and houselessness, and just our opportunities around how we can better serve the people of Oregon. And then we hear I'm not articulating this as best I can. And I'll tell you why. Because as a small business owner, but a bleeding heart liberal, I vote Democrat. I'm here for it. I do everything that I can with my business to make sure that I'm serving a community that I exist in. I know that at times, if I say, but I want a thriving economy, I am sort of attacked with that's bad, that's wrong. You're a conservative. You're what I don't even. It's just wild to me that the loudest voices seem to be on the fringes, and they don't necessarily, I think, represent the values of a lot of Oregonians. And I know that that we generally want to do good as a state. I want to blanket that, and I would stand by it. That most Portlanders and people in my vicinity want to do good, but the challenge is if you say something and it's taken wrong, everything is taken at face value, right? Because it's on a screen. Things are very one-dimensional because they're on social media. So as somebody in the arena, somebody that is at the table, how do you see things playing out as far as finding I know you mentioned that, but the realistic, I guess, approach as we approach this longer legislative session? Do you see people being able to come together on either side of the table? And as the lay people, are we getting most of our news from social media or hearing our loudest colleagues and circles yelling? But at the table, in those rooms, are those conversations that you just said happening? Are they coming together? And are they representing what a lot of Oregonians that I hear say that they aren't, their voices aren't being heard in the middle, or
it's a lot harder in the era of COVID. When I was in the legislature, some of the very best conversations I got to have were the ones that were in person, were the ones that were on the side of the chamber or in a hallway or those sorts of things. And that's obviously a lot harder in this environment where we have to be so much more deliberate about things. But I think the capacity exists. One of the great things about being a member of the Oregon legislature is that it's a relatively small community, 60 state representatives, 30 state senators. And you can know every one of those people. You can know where they come from and what their family's like and what their priorities are and their philosophy. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but you can go to a legislator whose opinion you respect, whose expertise and do as I did at times and say, look, I know you're going to vote against this, but can you help me make it better, make it stronger? And people will do that. So I think that is definitely possible. And I think each of us has a role to play as an individual to make sure that we're supporting the people who do that. We can say to someone who we don't agree with, you have a good point. That we can say, I still disagree with the way you want to get there, but I support the goal you have. These are important things, and we ought to celebrate that. As much as we bemoan the things we don't like, as much as we criticize people we disagree with, we should celebrate those things that people are doing right, even if they happen to have a different letter behind their name than the one that we prefer. These are part of who we are as Oregonians, as part of who we ought to be as Americans. And frankly, I'm not surprising anyone when I say this. I'm encouraged by President Biden and the tone that he's striking here. He doesn't, he's talking with the 10 Senate Republicans about a stimulus package. Doesn't mean that they have to agree with each other, but they're having that conversation, and that's the start of something. And I think we should take lessons from that in Oregon as well.
Right. I just want things to get done. I think like
Yeah.
a lot of us do. We want things to get done and less noise. And so again, I want preschool for all. I am here for that. And I know we need money to pay for it. And so it just always feels like two conflicting things. And if we can just meet at the table. So we have to end soon, but we have a very great sign-off question. That Tobias, what is your biggest concern and what is your biggest hope?
That is a great question. It's such a big one. I think they're probably related. The biggest concern is our lack of of capacity right now to focus on the long run, to pay attention, of course, to the ground that's immediately in front of us, but to realize that the decisions we're making right now are going to determine what sort of state we live in, what kind of place our kids get to grow up in and inherit from us. And the fact that we are bouncing from development to development instead of saying, this is the consistent plan, this is the route forward, this is the way we generate the kind of community we want to be a part of. The greatest hope for me is that these constraints, these challenges that we're seeing right now are also revealing big opportunities to make things better, whether it's school, whether it's small business, whether it's big business, whether it's the social safety net whose vulnerabilities are even more vivid and clear and in front of us. So these things, as is often the case, are connected, and our ability, our opportunities are there. What we have to do is continue to summon the urgency to make sure that we're clear with our leaders that these have to be the priorities. We've got to make sure that schools are open. We've got to make sure that we're helping small businesses survive and be poised to succeed as we come out of the COVID era.
All right. I know I am not the only one to say I am deeply passionate about our opportunities for growth, after this sort of post-traumatic growth, we'll call it, and coming out of this more vibrant than ever, creating more opportunities for people that deserve it, and getting the rest of the goddamn country not to think we're just here for Proud Boys and Antifa. We are a beautiful, beautiful state, and I think that we have so much to offer, and I think we have an incredible community of people willing to put in the work to get us there. And I just think we are here for change. We are here for growth, and I'm grateful that someone like you, who can bring a lot of reason and a lot of hope to our community and to our peoples and to our state, that we actually have something that we can start taking steps and action towards. And so I know you have some stuff you want to wrap up on and say that, but I'm very grateful, again, very grateful as somebody that wants to create businesses that create ecosystems for opportunity for people and just build up the humans in our community, that I'm grateful that you have given me the time and continue to give me and other small business owners the time, and like I said, the sliver of hope that we can keep doing good in our respective communities. So I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful all of you guys showed up. So Tobias, I'll let you finish and close out how you want to.
Thank you, Jessie. You made this conversation really fun, really important, and you kept it moving. And lots of people are saying what I think all of us are thinking, that post pandemic, when BurnCycle is on solid ground, we're all going to be eager to get your campaign started for whatever you want to run for.
Oh yeah.
So everyone's smiling, everyone's nodding at that. I really do appreciate the conversation tonight, and I hope you will keep in touch with all of us, that you will engage with us, all the channels. If this format worked for you, let us know. If you can think of things that we should do differently, let us know. We want to continue to be engaged in this conversation. We're clear on what the priorities are, but we've got a lot of work to do in front of us, and we want to stay in touch with you. So thanks for the time tonight. Please be in touch.
And everyone find out who their state representatives are and Indeed. Call them. Yeah. Thank you guys so very much for all of this.